Well, week 13 was a full of a lot of very good games, but I had a good week this week. Was just robbed of a perfect week though.
Let's talk football.
All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the All Around Sports Podcast, where sports are everything on this channel. I'm your host, Antonio. Today, we are doing my NFL Week 14 NFL predictions and power rankings. Last week, I went 9-4, making my total record in the last few weeks, in the first half of the season, 120 and 59. But this week, I was robbed again of a perfect week as I went 15-1. This also happened earlier in the season in week 6 when I went 13-1. The only one I got wrong this time was the New Orleans Saints.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
I had them over the Rams. Saints, you had one job.
One job.
And you couldn't do that. Oh my gosh. I was one pick away from having a perfect week. I was spot on every one of my picks except for that one. But oh my gosh, that was just so heartbreaking at the end. But man, we had a lot of very interesting games. You, of course, had the Raiders and Chicago Bears having both mismanaged time and miscues. You had so many games. You had the Seahawks coming back from a 21-7 down deficit. You had so many things going on for around the entire NFL. But I'm going to get into all of that here in just a minute. But before we get started, if you guys do enjoy this video, please be sure to do me a favor and smash that like button down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. For now, let's get this video started. Starting us off, if you're new to my channel, I start off with the top 5 best and worst prediction performances of the week. I go over my power rankings and then I get into my predictions. So in case you're new, I forgot to mention that. But now to the top 5 best performances of week 13. So starting us off at number 5, Josh Allen puts on a show versus the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, the 49ers were banged up, but did you all see that freaking lateral pass by Amari Cooper? I mean, that was straight out insane. That was just so freaking amazing. And not only that, Josh Allen becomes the first player in NFL history, the first quarterback in NFL history to have both a passing touchdown, rushing touchdown, and a receiving touchdown in the same game. So that is a very good milestone. Number 4 on the list, you have Saquon Barkley and the Eagles showing up against the Baltimore Ravens. This game was a very high anticipated game for throughout the season. We were all waiting for this game. And finally, we got to see it because Saquon was going off. And at this rate, he could break the great Eric Dickerson single season record. That would be a huge milestone. But the Eagles have been looking pretty good. I'm going to talk about them here when I go over their pick. But number 3, you have the Minnesota Vikings surviving against the Arizona Cardinals. They were down 22-16 at one point, but Sam Darnold, he's been known for this. He came in late in the game and put up a game-sealing touchdown, and then ultimately the defense picked off Kyler Murray in the last few minutes of the ball game. And the Vikings, watch out for this team because I had them as an early season dark horse, and they're already living up to my expectations. At number 2, unfortunately, you have this again. You've got the black and gold incarnation of winners, the Pittsburgh Steelers, having another winning season under Mike Tomlin with a win in Cincinnati. Now, I'm not going to discredit the Steelers at all because this team looks for real. The Russell Wilson has kind of a similar circumstance that he had in Seattle with the Legion of Boom and Marshawn Lynch. He's got so many great running backs, But Russell Wilson put on a show after throwing an early pick six. But Russ is starting to cook with the Steelers, unfortunately. Number one, you've got the Seattle Seahawks coming back from 21-7 down against the New York Jets and the bad man, who is literally bad right now. The Seahawks, Leonard Williams, pulling off one of the greatest performances we have ever seen. He is the first. He is the only defensive lineman to record the longest return for a touchdown by a defensive lineman in NFL history. But my goodness, this was an amazing showing by the defense and Leonard Williams. They were doing everything in their power in the second half, holding the Jets scoreless, and of course the bad man. I don't know what it is. Every single game we have against Aaron Rodgers always seems to be close. But enough about that. Now we move down to the top 5 worst performances of the week. And starting us off at number 5, you've got the San Francisco 49ers defense freezing up against the Buffalo Bills. I mean, the 49ers, I know they're battling injuries, but still, there's no room to allow a blowout like that to happen on the primetime light. And if we knew what that was going to happen, that game should have been flexed because that was just a bad Sunday night game, and the 49ers ultimately paid the price. But number 4, the Falcons continued their losing slant. Kirk Cousins. I don't know what happened with this guy. Ever since Kirktober ended, he's just been looking bad. And he threw for not one, not two, but 4 interceptions against the Chargers. Oh my gosh. The Falcons need to fix up something, or else it could cost them the division. But number 3, you got the Chicago Bears and the huge clock management at the end of the game. I was so hot about when I saw this. And I went over this in a video I did in the past few weeks, but in the past few days. This was atrocious. And I'm glad Matt Eberflus got fired because he deserved to after this loss. Because that is just uncalled for. And and he's been pretty much costing Caleb Williams of an offensive rookie of the year candidate spot. But number 2, you got the Las Vegas Raiders. Huge miscue at the end of the game. The Raiders, they were in field goal range. And all of a sudden, Aiden O'Connell wasn't even looking at the ball. It got snapped, and then all heck broke loose from there as the Chiefs went on to win the game. But the Raiders, they just beat themselves this game. That was just atrocious. And that is just terrible by the Raiders. But number 1, you got the New York Jets having a ninth straight losing season, the longest current active streak in the NFL. But my gosh, the Jets. What happened with this team? Aaron Rodgers was not able to show up as much as he could have. You, of course, had the 2 miscues on those fumbled returns by the Seattle Seahawks. But that was just atrocious on what they did. And the Jets officially have been eliminated from the playoffs. But now we jump into the power rankings and then we'll get into the predictions. To start us off on the power rankings, I'm going to talk about teams that have clinched a playoff berth. This will be a new segment throughout the next few weeks since we are in the last stretch of the NFL season, of the regular season, of course. You got the Kansas City Chiefs clinching a playoff berth, not the division yet, but that'll eventually change in the next few weeks. But then you also got the Buffalo Bills clinching their 5th straight AFC East division title. But can they start to show up in the month of January? We're gonna eventually find out in the next few weeks. So before we get into the power rankings, I do want to throw out some honorable mentions that I just left on the outside of this list. And here they are in no particular order. Indianapolis Colts, Dallas Cowboys, Washington Commanders, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Arizona Cardinals, and the Los Angeles Rams. The one team that robbed me of a perfect week. But talking about each of these teams really quick, the Colts looking pretty decent. I need to see one more win before I put them in the top 10. Cowboys, they've been kind of cooking lately, but I need to see one more win in order for consideration of them in the top 10. Then the Commanders getting a huge win, but I still need to see one more after losing two straight divisional games. I just need to see one more. Then the Buccaneers been on a hot streak after the return of Mike Evans. I still need to see one more win from that team in order for them to be considered. The Cardinals put up a really good fight. I'm not going to discredit them too much, but of course they got a big game this week against Seattle, which if they win that game, I might consider them putting them in the top 10. Then the Rams, they've been looking good, but I'm still not trusting them. I need to still see one more win in order for me to consider them in the top 10. Now we move to the power rankings. And starting us off at number 10, you got the Los Angeles Chargers making their way onto the top 10. The Chargers, they are for real. They have been looking really good for the past few weeks, having a 4 interception game against Kirk Cousins and the Falcons, and they are right now looking like a dangerous team in the AFC West. But then, number 9, another AFC West team, you got the Denver Broncos. The Broncos having a field day against Cleveland. And believers are starting to believe. I was critiquing them. I was one of the critiquers at first, but now I'm actually starting to believe in this guy Bo Nix, pun intended. But number 8, you got the black and gold incarnation of a winner, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers getting a big win, having another winning season. But then number 7, you got the Seattle mother loving Seahawks, baby. Because the Seahawks, even though they were down 21-7, still they were able to come back. And my goodness, the defense every week seems to get better. And Leonard Williams, of course, having a field day. I'll get into that later. But number 6, you got the Green Bay Packers. The Packers have been looking pretty good, and they got a big game against the Lions, but that is going to be a really interesting game as the Lions have been dealing with a lot of injuries recently. Then number 5, you got the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings, after having a close neck-to-neck fight against the Arizona Cardinals, they were able to come out with the win, and their team is just looking good right now. And number 4, remaining at number 4, you got the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs having another close call against the Las Vegas Raiders this time. I'm not going to move them up or down. I still need to see one more from this team in order to put them up higher, and of course, one of those top 3 teams to lose. One of those top 3, at number 3, you got the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles having a field day with Saquon Barkley. And right now, the Eagles look like a legit threat to the Detroit Lions for the NFC. Speaking of the Lions, for the first time in a few weeks, the Lions bounced down to number 2. Now, a couple of reasons why I put them at number 2. Number 1 is because they have a lot of injuries currently going on their defensive side. They have 13 different defensive players on IR, including Aiden Hutchinson. But I need to see something from this team. I need to see a win against Green Bay to put them back at number 1. But number 1, you got a new team in the top spot for the first time ever on my channel's history. This team is at number 1. You got the Buffalo Bills. The Bills have been amazing throughout the last few weeks. And this is the first time I have ever put them on my number 1 spot of the entire power ranking. So this was a huge game for the Buffalo Bills. And ultimately, the thing that got me to put them at number 1 was because of that lateral pass by Amari Cooper. That was amazing. And that is right now a top candidate for play of the year right now. But enough about that. Now it's time for the predictions. Let's get into it. Starting us off, you got an NFC North showdown on Thursday night, and man, this one's going to be a good one. You've got the Green Bay mother loving Packers, as Tom Grossi likes to call them, going on the road to Detroit to take on the Detroit Lions. The Packers having a very good win in the cold weather of their home turf in Lambeau Field. And this was needed because the Dolphins, they were looking good, but then eventually they knew they remembered they can't play in the cold. But the Packers, they've been looking pretty good for the last few weeks. Jordan Love has not thrown an interception in the past 2 weeks, so hopefully that'll play a factor. They are going to be taking on the Detroit Lions. Last time they faced off, the Lions absolutely butt whooped them in a blowout at home in Green Bay. But this game is going to be interesting because of a lot of the injuries to the Detroit Lions. I do think that is going to play a factor and give kind of the Packers an edge. Of course, the Packers have a big Sunday night game next week, which they have 4 straight primetime games, including last week. They have 3 more to go against the Lions this week, the Seahawks, and then I believe the New Orleans Saints, if I remember correctly. But in this case, because it's in Detroit, I am actually going to go with the Detroit Lions. I was originally thinking about the Packers. I was going back and forth on which team I was going to pick. But ultimately, the Detroit Lions have the depth. And if they can win this game, they might end up winning the entire NFC North and maybe even the number 1 seed of the NFC. And then you've got the New York Jets going on the road to Miami to take on the Dolphins. The Jets, what ended up happening that game? Because that was terrible. The Jets losing to the likes of the Seattle Seahawks and their former quarterback from a long time ago, Geno Smith. And Jet fans are probably wanting Geno Smith back because Aaron Rodgers is certainly not playing very well. And he's actually literally a bad man. Literally. But they are going to be taking on the Miami Dolphins that are holding on to their playoff hopes by a very thin needle. Because they lost this past week against the Green Bay Packers. They are holding on to their playoff hopes by a very thin hair. Because if they lose a game, they are immediately knocked out. Because their schedule is not easy, but it's not hard. Because they got to still face the 2 top teams I could see struggles with is the 49ers and also along with the Houston Texans. Those 2 are going to be concerning. But if you lose this week against the Jets, that's going to be a bad thing to have on your resume and ultimately knock you out of the playoff picture. But the Jets also got eliminated from the playoffs, as I mentioned earlier. So the Jets are not going to have anything to fight for and probably continue their tank. I'm going to go with the Miami Dolphins this time because the Dolphins have seemed to have the Jets' number whenever they face them. So I'm going to go with the Dolphins to get the win over the Jets. And sorry, Jet fans, the pain gets real. And then you've got maybe a very interesting game. You've got the New Orleans Saints going on the road to New Jersey to take on the Giants.
All hail the New York Giants!
The Saints losing last week to the Los Angeles Rams that ultimately cost me a perfect week again. But the Saints ended up getting bad news because Taysom Hill is now out for the remainder of the season, and ultimately he is a big piece on their offense. So maybe that's a bad sign for the Saints. They are going to be taking on the Giants. Now, for the first time this season, actually started Drew Lock, but it did not pan out in their favor as they still ended up losing to the likes of the Dallas Cowboys. But Drew Lock actually looked relatively decent that game. Other than, of course, that pick six to Overshawn, he did look pretty good. And they ultimately kept it really close with the Dallas Cowboys, which is ultimately nothing new for the Dallas Cowboys. But, oh my gosh, this one is very difficult for me to predict. I did like what I saw from the Giants last week, but then again, I'm very concerned about picking them. Oh my gosh, I am so torn right now. But you know what? I've watched Drew Lock during his time in Seattle, and with the rookie offensive talent that they have, I am actually going to go with the New York Giants. I think that injury to Taysom Hill is going to be a key factor in this football game. So I'm going to go with the Giants to get the win over the Saints. But Saints, don't make me regret this. And then you maybe have an interesting game. It'll depend on how this team plays against the really good team right now. You got the Carolina Panthers going on the road to Philly to take on the Eagles. The Panthers, even though they lost, Bryce Young has been looking better, especially since I forgot the guy's name, Dave Killian, or I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm very hard on names, but Bryce Young, he's been just slowly progressing to get better, and ultimately, the Panthers might not even have to draft a quarterback this year, but they are going to be taking on the Philadelphia Eagles that beat the Baltimore Ravens in a huge statement game last week, and Saquon Barkley ultimately showed Derrick Henry who's the best running back in the league. Because Saquon Barkley, this man has been something else. He, ever since he left the New York Giants, he has progressed. And this is ultimately his best shot at a championship. Because the Eagles, they right now look like the top threat to the Detroit Lions. I am going to give the edge to the Philadelphia Eagles. I do expect Bryce Young and the Panthers to put up a decent fight with the Philadelphia Eagles, maybe not get blown out. But I just don't see a way that they're going to get past Philly's defense, especially the way that Cooper DeJean has looked for the past few weeks. I'm going to go with the Eagles to get the win over the Carolina Panthers. And then you've got a third straight Ohio team for the Steelers. And this game could ultimately be very interesting. You've got the Cleveland Browns going on the road to Pittsburgh to take on the black and gold incarnation of winners, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers have another winning season.
Okay, fine. I'm cool. I'm fine.
This time with the quarterback Russell Wilson, who he's actually starting to legitimately cook. And he just literally cooked that entire Cincinnati defense. Because the Bengals defense, we pointed to this, has not been very good. And they ultimately got a really good team ahead of them as they are going against the Cleveland Browns at home. The Browns, last time we saw them against the Steelers, they beat them at home in the Snow Bowl, which they fell into the trap of the snow in that game. But the Steelers, they've been looking pretty good, and I cannot ignore what they're doing. I don't think they're going to be a like AFC contender that all that sort, but I'm actually starting to consider otherwise. I am going to go with the Steelers, though, because I think right now they are the better team in the AFC North, and they're only a few games away from clinching the AFC North if they can keep on winning. So I'm going to go with the Steelers to get the win over the Cleveland Browns. And then you got the Las Vegas Raiders going on the road to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. The Raiders, you had one job if you're the rest of the NFL. One job. And the Raiders, oh my gosh, this team has just been an abysmal right from the start of the season. We had a high expectations of their defense being better, although they did play better this game. They ultimately beat themselves because if they would have not made that fumble, they'd probably make the field goal and win the game. So another big costly opportunity by the Raiders. So I am going to go with the Buccaneers in this one, but the Raiders need to start doing something. And I think they should go out there and tank the rest of the season, trying to get the number one pick and go after Cameron Ward because he's ultimately their only hope right now of bringing this offense back to life. And then you've got an AFC South showdown. You've got the Jacksonville Jaguars going on the road to Tennessee to take on the Titans. The Jaguars, they did not do good, but ultimately it was because of Algier all the Shear's hit on Trevor Lawrence that ultimately concussed him. And Alshear was not let go of the NFL by this much because he ended up getting a 3-game suspension for that hit. And I think that is a respectable suspension because that thing needs to be changed for quarterbacks. But they're going to be taking on the Tennessee Titans that, oh man, Titans, just everything that can go wrong has gone wrong. Kind of like the Cowboys. But the Titans, this game right now is very difficult to predict. But I do think the Jaguars are going to try and continue their tank and try to get the number 1 pick. So I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans, but I'm not entirely confident because in any division matchup, it can be close. So I'm going to go with the Titans to get the win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Then you got Kirk Cousins' return to Minnesota.
Oh, I've been waiting for this. Oh boy, I've been waiting for this.
You got the Atlanta Falcons going on the road to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Oh my gosh, this is going to be a good game. The Vikings barely edging out against the Arizona Cardinals last week. They only beat them by 1 point, but my goodness. This game was a highlighted game on my calendar because it is the return of Kirk Cousins to Minnesota. Because Kirk Cousins and the Falcons, they've not been looking so smooth for the past few weeks. They've gone on a 3-game losing streak as they are currently right now, as we're looking at it, they're probably right now choking away the lead against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who they swept, by the way. The Falcons, I don't know what is going on with this team, but Kirk Cousins, he's not been the same since Kirktober ended, but we'll see what happens here. I do, however, expect this to be a very tight game. I do expect it to be a tight game. However, I am going to go with the Minnesota Vikings here because the Vikings have been doing very well off without Kirk Cousins. And I'm going to go with the Vikings to get the win over Kirk Cousins and the Falcons. Then you've got an NFC West showdown for the second time in the last 3 weeks. You've got the Seattle mother-loving Seahawks going on the road to Arizona to take on Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. The 2 top teams of the NFC West right now. Currently, the Seahawks sit at number 1 and the Cardinals sit at number 2, along with the Rams. But this is a pivotal game for the Seattle Seahawks because the Seahawks last week, after being down 21-7, Leonard Williams ultimately turning the tide of this game and had a pick six, the longest pick six we have seen in the NFL. And also, the thing of history here, because this was very big key. Leonard Williams has the longest return by a defensive lineman in NFL history, which is now 92. This, I believe, is this defense of Seattle has been constantly getting better every week. They've been looking more consistent. They did not have an offensive turnover, even though, regardless of their 2 muffed fumbles on the return. I do expect it to get better after the release of Vidlovishka Chenault. So, I mean, it was for the best, and the special teams ultimately needs to get better this week. But the Cardinals, putting up a decent fight against the Minnesota Vikings, only losing by 1. But I'm still not sold on the Cardinals. I'm still not sold on them because the one team that's constantly been in their way has been the team that they're about to face, the Seattle Seahawks.
I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it.
The Seahawks have had the number against the Cardinals, winning 6 straight against the Cardinals, and I expect that to continue. I'm going to go with the Seahawks on this one because right now I'm more confident in the Seattle Seahawks right now, the way the defense has been looking for Seattle. And I'm going to go with the Seahawks to get the win over the Cardinals and sweeping them once again. And then, oh, watch out, Buffalo. Watch out, Rams. You've got the Buffalo Bills going on the road to LA to take on the Rams. The Bills putting a butt whooping on the 49ers, and they just look so freaking dominant right now as the Bills have once again clinched the AFC East. But my goodness, the Bills have constantly looked better than they have in recent years. And then they're going to be taking on the Los Angeles Rams. That their defense did look good last week. However, it was the New Orleans Saints who were playing against. I'm still not entirely confident on this team. I'm still concerned because this week they're going against the Buffalo Bills and their old teammate Von Miller. But I'm gotta admit, Brandon Fisk and also along with Jared Verse probably going to be defensive rookie of the year candidates. But I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills to get the win over the Rams because the Rams, I just still ain't sold on the way their team has been playing. They can't seem to beat good teams because they couldn't even beat Philly and Miami. So I'm going to go with the Bills to get the win over the Los Angeles Rams. Bills, don't let me down. Oh man, you probably got an ugly game coming. You got the Chicago Bears going on the road to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. The Bears. Oh my gosh. Week after week, it is constant losing by a single thing. And this time it was clock management. And good thing for them, they fired Matt Eberflus finally, and they now have a new head coach. I do not remember on who the head coach was, but they're going to be taking on the 49ers. That, oh my gosh, something is definitely wrong with the 49ers. Because, oh my gosh, you just don't know what this team's going to do. Because the 49ers, ever since their loss to Seattle, they have gone on a 3-game losing streak. And the defense of San Francisco has not looked really good. But Caleb Williams, he showed some promise last week against the Detroit Lions, even in a losing effort. So oh my gosh, this one's actually very hard for me to predict. I know the 49ers are favorites, but I'm not confident in them being favorites. You know what? I was considering going with the 49ers, but the way the Bears have been looking and the way that the 49ers have been constantly beat and ultimately have probably been eliminated from the NFC West picture, I am going to go with the Chicago Bears on this one because I think the Bears, the Caleb Williams, is right now looking good. Their defense has been looking good also. Of course, it was under Matt Eberflus. But this team, I believe right now, is better than the 49ers because the 49ers, something's apparently gone wrong with this team. But I'm going to go with the Bears to get the win over the 49ers. Bears, don't let me down. And then on Sunday night, you've got a very interesting AFC West showdown. You've got the Los Angeles Chargers going on the road to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. The Chargers having a field day against the Atlanta Falcons, having 4 interceptions, and my goodness, this team has been something else. But my goodness, the Chargers, they have been looking pretty good, even in the absence of J.K. Dobbins. They still have been looking good. They are going to be taking on the Kansas City Chiefs that, regardless of being going against bad teams, they still find a way to win. And it is so freaking annoying at a certain extent.
aka Spider-Man, aka the Spider Menace. But rest assured, dear viewers, we here at the Daily Bugle will not rest until we've uncovered the truth behind his web of lies. I'm Jay Jonathan.
But is something you expect from the Chiefs. Because no matter what, they have always found ways to get wins. Because last year, we were down them because they were dropping so many of their passes. And they ultimately won the Super Bowl last year. But the offensive line has primarily been an issue, and now it's starting to be their defense. I'm not too concerned on the Chiefs, even though I've mentioned it in past videos. I'm not too concerned on the Chiefs because it seems like in the playoffs, they're a whole different team. So in this case, I am going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs because either way, they are going to find a way to win because it is the Chiefs and it's ultimately Patrick Mahomes, one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen, other than of course TB12, which I think right now Patrick Mahomes is better than Tom Brady as far as right now. But I'm going to go with the Chiefs to get the win over the Los Angeles Chargers. However, I'd not be surprised if it was close again. And then Sunday night, you got a very intriguing matchup. You've got the Cincinnati Bengals going on the road to Big D to take on the Cowboys. The Bengals, even though Joe Burrow was playing his heart out, the defense still constantly, time and time again, has cost this team. The Bengals. I mean, this team needs to do something because Joe Burrow is ultimately losing years because of this defense.
We have a problem. We have a problem. Ladies and gentlemen, we have problems.
Because the defense has been terrible for the Bengals. And ultimately, I think that needs to be addressed in the offseason. And Zach Taylor, he needs to be investigated because clearly I don't know what he's doing at the early part of the season, but he's constantly putting his team at the big pit, in a pit at the beginning of the season. And ultimately, I don't think this is a pit that they can get out of. They're going to be taking on the Dallas Cowboys that, hey, they're on a 2-game winning streak right now. Not expecting a lot from the Cowboys. The Cowboys, even though they beat the Giants, it is the New York Football Giants. But this game, I do expect it to be very close, like has every game for the Bengals. But I am going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals because even though the Cowboys have been showing me some good stuff, I still need to see one more. And their playoff hopes are holding on a very thin wire. So I'm going to go with the Bengals to get the win over the Cowboys and ending the Cowboys season. Let me know in the comments what you think. Was there a team in the top 5 best or worst performances that I missed? Which one do you think I should put in the best or worst, and why? Then, for the power rankings, give me a grade A through C on how well you think my list was, and then let me know in games who you guys have picked. And I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to do me a favor and smash that like button down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, I'll see you all in the next one. Ciao for now.